Hello and welcome. My name is Sara Harberson. I'm America's college counselor. Thanks so much for joining me on my first Facebook Live of 2020. It's great to see you all here. I know that there are going to be seniors, juniors, and even freshmen and sophomores who are going to be joining this Facebook Live. This is a Q&A, a rapid-fire Q&A. So if you have questions about the admissions process, no matter where you are in the admissions process, you can ask your question in the comments section below the live feed. We are streaming live on both of my Facebook pages, Sara Harberson and also Admissions Revolution. You can find all of my Facebook Live sessions on my admissionsrevolution.com site. You can find my weekly blog on my saraharberson.com site. I've got a brand new blog coming out tomorrow. It's especially helpful for those high school juniors. It's all about what you need to do starting after the holiday break. So right now, I'm going to give you a checklist tomorrow, and it's a checklist that I actually use when I'm working with private clients. So those high school juniors who want to see what they need to be doing between now and the end of the school year, you can check out my blog tomorrow. But also those juniors, that's the class of 2021. If you follow my Instagram or my Facebook pages, you know that I have Application Nation groups. We've got a brand new Application Nation group launching next Wednesday, the 22nd, for the class of 2021. If you want a chance to be a member of Application Nation, you can sign up for the wait list and get 20% off your first month's membership, so check it out. But we also have Application Nation for younger classes for the class of 2022, 23, and if you can believe it, in a matter of months, we're going to be welcoming members of the class of 2024 into our younger Application Nation group. I see we've already got questions. I'll just mention that we have a ton of great resources for all of you, a lot of free resources that you can access on my Facebook pages and also my two websites, admissionsrevolution.com and saraharberson.com. But I think we should get right to it. I think we've got a bunch of questions already. First one coming in from Heather. If my son got an 1110 on the PSAT, cold, what does that tell you about a reasonable school levels he should target? Okay, so some things to keep in mind about the PSAT. Most high school juniors will take the PSAT in the fall of the school year, usually in October. They don't get those scores back until December. The PSAT, interestingly, is not on the same scale as the SAT. You're not going to see a 1600 SAT score, but the 1110 is a really great score to get you started. In terms of colleges, I would really need to know the student's curriculum and GPA. If class rank is provided, that's something that I factor in. That's something that I help private clients, but also members of Application Nation with making a sound and thoughtful college list. So in terms of what to put on that college list, it's really a starter list, especially for a student who only has the PSATs. I would generally recommend, ultimately thinking about your SATs being probably in that 12, maybe even 1300 mark in the end. If you decide to take the SATs 1, 2, or possibly even 3 times, that's generally what you see. Sometimes you only see a 50-point increase. Sometimes you don't see any increase at all. But I think with some preparation, you're probably going to see that test score go at least into the 1200 range. And you want to factor in those SAT scores, the curriculum, GPA, and as I mentioned, class rank when you're coming up with a college list. And that's really just to get you started. Because as you start visiting colleges, you're going to see what you like and what you don't like. And frankly, those SAT scores could also go up even through senior year. Next question from Vicky. So my daughter just got waitlisted for Villanova Nursing. Villanova just announced actually tonight. What are her chances of getting in, and should she reach out to admissions? Okay, so I actually have a great guide that is for those high school seniors who got deferred. We'll try to post it into the comment section below so you can access it. Nursing programs are some of the most competitive programs across the country. The nursing program at Villanova is an incredibly selective program. If a student gets deferred, whether it's for nursing, for arts and sciences, for business, engineering, whatever the case may be, the first thing that the student should do is really read their decision letter, see what it says about deferred applicants and whether or not the student needs to show continued interest to have a chance of admission in the regular decision round. That student who's deferred, their application will be reviewed once again in the context of the regular decision applicant pool, but generally I see students who are going to be getting in the regular decision pool, they tend to have reached out to the admissions office. Usually they've written a really thoughtful and powerful letter, but you want to look at your decision letter to find out what you can submit, and sometimes there is a word count on what you submit. So if you got deferred from the University of Michigan, you can write a letter or a statement of continued interest, but it can only be up to 250 words. Also, a lot of colleges will put a deadline on it. If you're trying to update that college, you have to do it sometimes by a certain date. I know the University of Pennsylvania, I think, is by the end of January, for example. So just make sure you're reading all the fine print on your decision letter. And sometimes there's information on the portal. But the students who have the best chance of being deferred, the students who are deferred and have the best chance of acceptance in regular decision have done extremely well senior year, and usually have followed through with a beautiful and powerful personal letter to that college. Next question. What is the best way to negotiate for more merit money from a college or university? So colleges don't like us to use the word negotiate, but that's really what happens. So if a student gets admitted to a number of colleges, and let's say they get merit scholarships at 2 different institutions. Let's say they got $5,000 from one college and $10,000 worth of merit money from another college. Let's say the student really wants to go and enroll at the college that only gave them $5,000, but their parents are saying, you need to get as much merit money as possible. If the 2 schools are counterparts, are equal in terms of their admissions process and their scholarship protocol, the best thing that you can do is actually provide the admissions office and the financial aid office with the offer that you got from that other institution, because they want to see what their competition is. The families that I hear back that actually get more merit money in the process are those that are showing other offers from other institutions, and those other institutions are comparable in terms of reputation, admission standards as the institution they're trying to get more money from. Next question. My son took the SAT early and got his targeted score on the verbal section, but is taking it again to get his math score up a little bit more. Is it frowned upon if he were to sleep through the verbal section on his upcoming test so he is more well rested for the math section, or will it look bad if he has a really low verbal score on his second attempt taking the test? So, most students who are looking at selected colleges, they're going to take the SAT or ACT a second time and possibly even a third time. I wouldn't go beyond that. But, if they're trying to get one section of the SAT they're trying to raise their score on one section, they're trying to put all of their energy into that in terms of the preparation, sometimes it means that other section, the score might not be as good the second time around. I would say if there is a really big difference in the scores in the math section, for example, or the critical reading and verbal section, there's a really big difference. An admissions officer may see that, may note that, but in the end, they usually are going to be taking, especially for the SAT, your highest critical reading and writing score and your highest math score. And for some colleges and universities, they never even actually see all of your scores. You're able to pick and choose what you share. When you're filling out, let's say, the common application, you can indicate your highest score on each section, and that's the same case for the ACT. Next question from Melissa. Hi, we are going to visit schools this spring. What do you recommend looking for on campus to see if you could be a good fit? All right, so for those freshman, sophomore, and junior families who want to get a head start on campus visits, second half of the school year is usually a good time to do it. There are a lot of long weekends coming up. MLK Junior Day is coming up. I think it's this weekend or the following weekend. I can't remember. President's Weekend. Spring break is coming up. So I would encourage you, before you decide that you're actually going to sign up for an information session and tour, make sure that classes are in session, because students will get a much better feel of whether or not they can visualize themselves and really see that institution as a match. There are a lot of colleges and universities out there that track demonstrated interest. So visiting through the admissions office, doing the campus tour and doing an information session is really important. It not only helps you get a better sense of whether it's a good match, but it also can help you in the admissions process. So a tour and information session is at the minimum stuff that you should do. But I always tell families, try to find the middle of campus. Sit down. There are usually chairs set up outside, especially if it's a nice day, and take in what happens as classes shift from one class to the next, or right before lunch or right after lunch. Sitting in the middle of campus, observing the students, interacting with each other and interacting with you, you really do get a great sense of things. You don't have to stay overnight. If you do that, I would say senior year is probably the best time to do it, and I would probably stay overnight with someone you know. After that, it gets a little bit tricky, especially if it's done through the admissions office. Next question, a New Jersey mom. Good job, I'm from New Jersey as well. We lost your question there. So hopefully we will find it again. If not, please feel free to type it into the comment section again, because it was a New Jersey mom and I wanted to hear it. All right, next question though. Lisa, is it more difficult to get into school if my son doesn't have a particular major in mind? This is a very complex question, Lisa. I talk a lot about major choice and program choice with my private clients and my Application Nation groups. Actually, the checklist that you're going to be seeing tomorrow on my blog talks about this. If a student is applying to a fairly selective college or university, the admissions officer, even if they don't admit this, before they even start reading the student's application, they see the student's name and high school and state that they're coming from. They also see what program or major the student is applying to. And that helps them figure out how they're going to read that application, because certain majors and certain programs are going to be looking for certain things in the application. So it's my belief that if you put down a specific major and you have the evidence to back it up, you're going to be much more competitive in that applicant pool. I think if you're listing if you're going to be an undecided major as an applicant, especially if you're applying to a selective college, it's really hard because admissions officers are trying to get a feel for what your academic interest is. So if there's a chance to talk about all of your academic interests in, let's say, a supplemental essay, that can help combat some of those concerns with an undecided application. But the fact is, I just tell students, think about what you're interested right now and what major or program do you have the evidence to back it up. And that's the one you should go and list on your application, knowing full well that you could easily change your mind once you get there. The tougher part is changing your mind when the two majors are in two different undergraduate programs. So let's say you apply to a university, you get into the liberal arts program, the arts and sciences program, but you really want to be in the business program. That is going to be a lot harder to switch because it's two different undergraduate schools. But students change their majors within an undergraduate school all the time. Next question. Is the IB diploma program worth it? Or honors and AP, are they enough? So if you're not familiar, the IB program is the International Baccalaureate Program. If you do the full IB program, it is highly respected. It is also incredibly demanding. There are some high schools that offer the IB program in the United States and overseas. There are some high schools that offer the IB program, the AP program, and some high schools don't even offer any of those. What I generally tell students is you want to take the most challenging curriculum that you can handle. If it is the IB full diploma program, I would encourage it, especially if the student does well in those classes. It is highly respected. When I tell families that a lot of highly selected colleges will recalculate a student's GPA, they get worried that admissions officers aren't paying attention to the rigor of the curriculum. But the fact is, admissions officers are absolutely trained not only to look at the grades in those core academic subjects each year, but look at the curriculum as well. In fact, when I was a brand new admissions officer back in the day at the University of Pennsylvania, I was trained to literally count up every single honors course, every single year that the student, every single year of high school, honors courses, how many AP courses, how many IB courses. It was part of my job to make a note of that. So admissions officers are trained to not only look at the grades, but also how advanced, how challenging the courses are. Next question. The New Jersey mom wondering if college admissions officers are familiar with the challenges and opportunities at magnet schools. Not sure if selective schools will be familiar with what my student is experiencing. So Suzanne, I covered New Jersey for the University of Pennsylvania for a really long time. I covered Northern New Jersey for the longest time, and there are a lot of great magnet high schools. The student has to be accepted to that program. There's usually a specialization, science and technology or healthcare management or engineering, for example. It's a very self-selecting group that goes to the magnet schools. The curriculum is usually very advanced as well. And so admissions officers understand that the student is usually taking more challenging classes. They're surrounded by very competitive students. But the fact is that admissions officers are going to be looking at that student in the context of that high school. They want to see, especially if it's a selective college, they want to see the best of every high school, even if it was selective to get into that high school. If your child attends a magnet high school, I think it's important to kind of look at the colleges that most students end up applying to, get admitted to, and enroll. But I always tell students, don't be afraid to apply to some other colleges that are outside the box, because sometimes if you're competing against your classmates for every single college on your list for an acceptance, sometimes it makes it really hard. So I encourage students to look beyond the obvious colleges, and it can really help them stand out in an applicant pool. Next question. Next question, is the final transcript you send at the end of the school year just to make sure you graduated, or do they potentially scrutinize the grades? Could a college take back their offer? Okay, great question. So students, whether they're admitted early decision, early action, rolling admissions, regular decision, once they graduate and finish high school, their college counselor or their guidance counselor at their high school needs to send an official final transcript. And that is done for a number of reasons, not only to just check that the student actually graduated from high school and has a high school diploma, but they are checking the final grades as well. Sometimes because the student only had to submit self-reported grades in classes, and so the admissions staff is actually looking at the transcript to make sure that all of the classes and all of the grades the student included in their application match up with what's on the transcript. But also they're making sure that the student continued to do well throughout their senior year. I can tell you though, being on the other side, working at a college or university in the admissions office, being a dean of admissions, and looking over these final transcripts, I can tell you that the student would really have to do extremely poorly for them to be in a lot of trouble, meaning that their offer of admission could be rescinded. It does happen. And that is part of your acceptance letter, that the student has to continue to do well. I would tell a student that, if they got straight, let's say A's and B's throughout high school, and second half of senior year, they ended up getting D's and F's or possibly even C's, they're probably going to have to answer to the admissions office. I can remember requiring students to send an explanation about what happened to their grades if they did go down. If they went down significantly, yes, that can put the offer of admission in question. So just keep that in mind. It's important to keep up the hard work through senior year. Next question, is it possible for a student to get too much help and the admissions office won't believe that he wrote his own essays? I want to help my nephew in the admissions process, but do admissions officers, can they tell if someone else helped too much? Absolutely. You can tell in a heartbeat. These admissions officers are reading thousands of essays every single year. I've probably read over 1 million essays in my career. And so when things aren't adding up, the student is taking, let's say, a regular English class, and let's say they're getting a C in regular English, and the teachers are mentioning that the student is struggling with their writing, but then they actually deliver an incredible essay in their application, the admissions officer is going to be wondering what happened. I think it's tough though, as adults, whether it's a parent, an aunt and uncle, or a mentor, they want to help students. And I would say that the best way that they can help students is really right at the beginning of the writing process and at the end. So I tell all the students that I work with that it's really important to pick the right topic for your college essay, and talking to someone you trust can help guide you through that. So I like to be with the student right at the beginning. I want them to pick the right topic right from the start. And I also want to be there at the end. So before they actually copy and paste or upload their essay into their application, I want to look at the essay and make sure that it all flows well and that there are no grammatical mistakes or typos in the essay. And so I think the adults involved really can be extremely helpful at the beginning, at the end. But we want to try to let our kids do the middle part and really write a strong rough draft, and we can help them along the way in the editing process. Next question, how important is the reputation of your high school? Can a student at a small, private, less academically challenging school who performs very well stand a chance, or should we transfer to a school that matches our kids' academic level? This is a great question. If you were to ask this question 20, 30, 40 years ago, I would tell you that where a student goes to high school makes a huge difference in the admissions process. But now, in 2020, these admissions offices have to be so careful that they are not giving preferential advantages or preferential treatment to students who attend certain high schools. So now it's really about not what high school you attend, but what you took advantage of at your high school. So highly selective colleges especially, they want the best of the best from each high school. They don't just want to admit students from highly sophisticated private high schools across the country or boarding schools. They want to see the best of the best from every single high school, whether it's a boarding school, whether it's a public high school, whether it's a parochial school, whether it's a rural community school, depending on where you live. They want to see the top students in their applicant pool. And so it's not about where you go to high school anymore. It's about what you do while you're there. Next question. Are awards still needed to be recorded in the Common Application? Where do you record this? Okay, so if you have a younger student, freshmen, sophomores, or juniors, I would encourage the student to open up an account on Common App. You can actually do that starting in 9th grade. I do not want you filling it out just yet, because the best time to really fill out the application is the summer between junior and senior year. That's when you have a much better sense of who you are and what should be included in the application. But if you were to look around on Common App or the Coalition application, you will see that there is an honor section in each application. For Common App, that's the one that a lot of students will use. You get to list 5 different honors. So sometimes a student doesn't have any honors to list, and sometimes a student has more than 5 and they have to pick and choose. You usually have a limited amount of space to be able to provide an explanation, so you want to make sure that it's clear. Sometimes students have so many honors that a lot of times they will actually insert one of their big awards in the activities listing on that section of the application. So you can be really creative about where you put everything. Another example is a lot of students who feel like they don't have a lot of honors. They'll say to me, well, I'm in National Honor Society, and I can say, well, if you're just a member and you don't have a really big leadership role, you might think about moving National Honor Society from your activities list, especially if you need room for other things, and actually putting National Honor Society in the honors section of the application. Next question. Another New Jersey mom, sophomore daughter, currently enrolled in the AP Capstone Diploma program. IB not offered at her school. I'm aware it's a much newer program compared to IB. Are colleges recognizing this program, though? In your experience, are kids benefiting like they would with the IB program? Great question, Hope. We actually covered this exact question tonight with my Application Nation group, the younger group, the class of 2021, 22, and 23. So the AP Capstone program is it's offered through the College Board. The College Board oversees the AP program, and it was really designed to be direct competition to that IB program, the International Baccalaureate program. I've heard wonderful things about the AP Capstone program from students and from parents who've done it. It's a 2-year program. You take AP seminar and AP research. It's usually done 11th and 12th grade. One thing that you want to keep in mind, though, is a lot of times the AP Capstone program actually fulfills a student's English requirements. However, not all colleges and universities see the AP Capstone as being able to fulfill their English requirement. So you just want to be careful with it. I generally say it's a great program. Just make sure you're looking into this more carefully, because in some cases a student still has to take their regular English class, maybe AP Literature, AP Language their senior year, and then what ends up happening if they want to do the AP Capstone program, they're taking possibly 6 core classes, which is a lot to take. So my best advice is it's a phenomenal program, great preparation for college, but I usually see it as an add-on class rather than replacing one of the core subjects: English, math, science, foreign language, and history. Next question. My daughter took 2 years of Spanish but was advanced and bored silly. I hear this a lot. Her petition to move up a level was denied, so in junior year, facing the same teacher, she decided not to continue language study. Is this going to hurt her? I get this question probably on a daily basis, so it's so important to answer this tonight. You will look at the admissions websites of colleges and universities, and you will see that there are minimum requirements in terms of the courses that students need to take in high school. And so a lot of times the college or university will say that the student only needs 2 years of foreign language, or maybe even 3 years of foreign language. Those are minimum requirements. If your child is looking at more selective colleges, you really should be focused on taking all 5 core subjects for all 4 years. However, things like this happen. You get a tough teacher. There's a scheduling conflict. You want to take 2 sciences and you don't want to take foreign language your junior year. I would just encourage those students that if they're looking at selective colleges and you didn't take foreign language junior year, I think it's really, really important to get that class, get Spanish back on the schedule for senior year to be the most competitive applicant you can be. Next question. My daughter's school allows the parents to send a Bragg letter to the school. So when the teachers are writing recommendations, they have more information on the student. What would you include on the Bragg Sheet? Okay. So sometimes it's called a Bragg Sheet. Sometimes it's called the parent questionnaire. Sometimes the students have to fill it out. Sometimes the parents fill it out. Sometimes both have to fill it out. You have to remember that if you're filling this form out, whether it's the parent or student, a lot of times it's happening both at private and public high schools. These counselors are very busy, and they're basically taking what you've written and just copying and pasting it into their letter. They might be adding some other pieces of information in it, but it's possible that they are going to quote you verbatim but not actually give you credit for it in the letter of recommendation. So it's really important to think through every single answer that you provide to the counselor writing for the student. I generally tell parents to mention things that no one else would know about their kid, to mention things that are not already on the application, to mention things that really show a different side to their child. I also tell parents, and I tell students also, when you're describing yourself as a student, or if a parent is describing their child, try to avoid adjectives. They can be replaced easily. Everybody uses adjectives, and it's really hard to come up with unusual ones. I guarantee you I've seen every single adjective written about a student. I tell students to talk about themselves using nouns and verbs, and I tell parents to do the same. It can really change the whole feeling of that Bragg Sheet or that Bragg form, or what you're providing for the counselor of record. I think we've got time for maybe one more question. Do admissions officers value leadership? Absolutely. And so when you're thinking about filling out your activities list on whether it's Common App or Coalition application or a college's specific application, you want to remember you're going to be listing the club or the organization or the job or the hobby or the family responsibility that you have. You're going to be listing it. You're also going to be indicating how many years you've done that activity. Did you just start it in senior year, or have you been doing it from 9th grade on? You're also going to be asked how many hours per week, how many weeks per year you do that activity, and any kind of notable achievement that you want to share. Leadership is something that you obviously want to share when you're listing that activity. The big leadership roles for the big organizations tend to make a tend to make a bigger splash when it comes to impressing the admissions officers, but not everybody is a traditional leader. And so I encourage students to really think about different ways of influencing and making an impact on the activities that they do. So one way to impress admissions officers is, to be the president of a club, or to be the secretary of a club, or to be captain of your varsity team at high school. But another way is actually to show impact. And so let's say you do an independent hobby. You're the only one doing it. You're the only one doing it in your community. Maybe you're the only one doing it in the world. If you're the only one, there isn't an opportunity to run for a leadership role, but you could have incredible impact. Let's say you are a blogger and you write a weekly blog. I write a weekly blog, but let's say student gets 1 million people to read their blog every single week. That is impact. That means that your reach is far beyond where you live. And so think about not only leadership being important, but impact is just as important. And on that note, I think we've got to wrap things up. But I encourage you that if you have questions like this, come back for those Facebook Live sessions that I do every single month, but also consider Application Nation. I've got groups for every class here imaginable, and that's a chance for you to be part of this private Facebook group. You can ask me questions 24/7. I answer all of those questions on the discussion board. It helps you, and you also learn a ton about the admissions process. I tell families, I try to train them to become like admissions officers and to think like admissions officers, and that can help them guide their child through the admissions process. So on that note, I hope you have a great night, everyone, and I encourage you to check out all of my free resources. Look into Application Nation, especially class of 2021 if you're a junior, and you can get 20% off your first month's membership, so check it out if you join the waitlist now. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night. Bye-bye.